US is going full-fledged communist. It started as a capitalist country, and there was supposed to be freedom of every individual who was a citizen of US, but unfortunately over the last few decades, I would say since the assassination of JFK, the country is under complete communist control. And if you don't agree with me, you just have to look around and see what is going on in US. All decisions, all policies are based upon what suits a few elite and what works for the military industrial complex, what works for a few corporations, and not for 99.9% of Americans. This is why there is lack of complete health insurance. This is why there is lack of free education. This is why there's lack of equal opportunity for every American. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and all while US went on the track of communism, China started to adopt a new policy of integrating capitalism into its communist model, as a result of which China today is the emerging superpower of the world. Whenever you cater to the needs, to the interests of a few individuals compared to the rest of the people, you are catering to a communist ideology. US is governed, controlled by a few secret organizations that are primarily run by communists and serve a communist agenda. It no longer adheres to the US Constitution that is based upon democratic principles. It adheres to the likes and dislikes of a few individuals who are running the entire country. You can see that small businesses are suffering a lot in US. They are shutting down because of heavy taxation against them compared to the rich who are evading taxes and are using taxes to their advantage. And you're also seeing that there are complete mergers of all successful small businesses into a few big sharks, which act like cartels and that monopolize to occupy the entire retail market of US. So your biggest sharks in the retail market are just a few families, and they decide the consumer products prices. They decide where US is going to go. And when this happens, then you are no longer a capitalism based country. You're a communist country. All small businesses, all middle class businesses are shutting down due to heavy taxation, due to non-favorable policies of the US government that favor the bigger sharks, that allow the bailouts to the big banks, to the big companies, at the cost of the smaller businesses, at the cost of the average American middle class taxpayer. And this is happening very fast. US is losing its freedom, and it is going to be converted into a complete communist hell. And the process is already completed. And those who try to antagonize and those who try to defy this communism takeover of US, they are either killed, they are arrested, they are ostracized, they are basically, called conspiracy theorists. This is the best excuse they can come up with, that you are a conspiracy theorist, when the reality is this, that we are now talking about a universal basic income. What is the meaning of a universal basic income? It means every American is going to receive a certain paycheck for doing nothing from the government. And this is what happens in communist countries, where people will stop working because they are paid a certain basic. And then no matter how much you work hard, you will not be able to achieve success, because at the end of the day, you do not have the opportunity, you do not have the contacts, you don't have the networking that the elite have and carry. They can tap into billions of dollars worth of loans. They can run away with their offshore tax havens. But an average small to middle class American does not have the opportunity to network with the powerful lobbies in the Congress, to be able to process laws that favor small businesses in US, that favor middle class businesses in US. So the heavy taxation burden is still carried by the middle class of US that is quickly converting into the poor class. And this is what happens in a communism based economy. US has adopted communist practices because its policymakers are pro-communism. We're talking about people like George Soros, who look at their interests at the cost of interests of 99.9% Americans. And at the same time, concurrently, China is really going ahead because it adopted the policies that made US a superpower. It adopted capitalism. It is giving equal opportunity to every Chinese individual to be able to practice business openly with less taxation, with taxation holidays, with better subsidies, with better opportunities to be able to come up from being below the poverty line to becoming a middle class and then eventually becoming rich. So people in China are becoming richer in spite of them having a communist basis because they have decided to integrate capitalism and they no longer have communism. They are now a full-fledged capitalist country. On the other hand, US has been tactfully converted into a communist country and nobody is interested in looking into it because the freedom of an average American citizen is right now being paralyzed. The civil liberties of an average American citizen are being arrested and people are distracted. People are so obsessed with trying to survive and trying to make the ends meet that they don't have the time to realize what exactly is going on around them. It's communism all around them. This is where we are at right now. And we are like 2-3 months from a point where the US dollar is going to crash. The markets are going to crash. And what's next? The next thing is, like a communist country, you're going to receive your universal basic income, which is like $2,000 or $1,500 every month, like a social security. All of you will be on social security. Nobody will have a desire to work like a typical communist country. Nobody will have the motivation to work hard to be able to become a millionaire or a billionaire because it will become next to impossible as a few sharks and cartels take over the entire retail market, like Amazon, like Walmart. It's coming. It's already here while you were sleeping or you were so distracted that you failed to notice on what self-destructive pathway US has now, gone. And we just saw what Biden did the other day. Biden bombed Syria and Iraq. These are two sovereign countries that have their own governments, that have their own constitution. And Biden decided to bomb them just like that against the will of their sovereign leaders. And that is called invasion. That is called imperialism. That is called colonialism. And that is what communist leaders act like. If China did something like this, or if Russia did something like this, the whole world would have stood up and said, you can't do that. You can't just go to a country and bomb its people. And we now know that the people who were killed and assassinated by the airstrikes of Biden, they were actually fighting against ISIS. There were soldiers working to contain the menace of ISIS. They were fighting against terrorism, not for terrorism. And this is not the first time the Biden administration has done this. They call it justifiable in the name of collateral damage, but this happened during the Obama administration too, when Biden was the vice president. And at that time, they actually droned hundreds of little children less than 10 years of age in Waziristan, which is part of Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Yemen. You can see the faces of these children who were droned due to the rogue policies of military industrial complex owned and sponsored Biden administration, Obama administration. This is not how you're going to be able to achieve peace, because peace is not profitable for them. They cannot achieve peace at any cost, because they know once peace happens, then their monopoly is going to vanish. Their power is going to vanish. They feed on fear. They have invested heavily in the mainstream media so that you are raised, groomed, mind programmed to fear an invisible enemy, which is communism, all while they are the very core ideological being of communism right now. You are being governed by communists, not China, not Russia, not any other communist country, but the Biden administration, the entire Democratic Party, unfortunately, is now under complete communist control, and your country is getting converted into a communist hell as I say these words. It's only a matter of time that the military industrial complex, the military contractors, the rogue, corrupt corporations are going to take over your entire civil liberties. They already tried to do that during the COVID pandemic, so-called plandemic, so-called pandemic. They already tried to do that. And what were you able to do in response? You couldn't do anything. They had you shut down your entire life. And now they have studies, they have data to prove that the lockdowns actually hurt and actually aggravated the pandemic instead of helping the people. It actually killed more people than saved lives. And they're able to get away with all of it, and you couldn't do anything about it. So what's the guarantee that now you'll be able to fight these communist dictators to be able to achieve freedom for your country? Bye-bye.